Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another episode review from Season 5 of The Loud House. Today's episode is titled, Much Ado About Noshing. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. The episode begins with the kids seeing their alpaca-sounding dad crying over his restaurant getting negative feedback from someone called New Nosher123. The kids start investigating on who this person might be, and they come up with several suspects. They invite them to Lynn's table in the attempt to persuade any one of them to stop leaving bad reviews, even though they have to put up with their outrageous behavior in the meantime. Even after everyone is satisfied, more dislikes are being posted on Nosh, but it turns out the reviews are not coming from the customers. They're coming from Mr. Loud, who somehow butt-dialed his phone into creating the New Nosher account and accidentally kept thumbing down the restaurant. The dad makes it up to the customers by offering them one free weekly meal for the next year, and the kids all agree to help, except the socially distant Lisa and her robot Todd, who just up and quit. Lucky them. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. I was starting to think there was never going to be an episode where Lynn's table would be subjected to customer reviews for his business, and the most we had ever gotten with such an idea was back in the Season 4 episode, Coop Dreams. Although I do have some problems with this episode, there is one thing that saves it from being much worse than it could have been. It may not seem like a lot, but I really liked the kids in this episode. They reminded me of their roles in the episode's present tense and job insecurity. Instead of seeing them fight among themselves to solve this problem, they're seen working together to achieve a common goal for the benefit of their dad, and I always appreciate moments like that. I also thought they looked quite snazzy in their waitstaff uniforms. It's not every day we see Lucy wearing something a tad more normal, but it's still her favorite color, so it's a win-win for her. Anyway, no matter how much torment they had to endure, they really stuck their necks out, or in Luna's case with Principal Huggins' wobbly chair, her own foot, and that shows how far they'll go to help their dad. I'm amazed by the amount of strength it took someone like Lola to not snap out on Scoots. Speaking of Scoots, she's still in a relationship with that Tyler guy, who turns out to be a lot more childlike than we thought. Between a timid indoor voice and ordering chicken nuggets, those looks of his can definitely be deceiving. Who knew? Of course, it turns out none of the 5 suspected customers were the ones behind the New Nosher account, and that's when the episode slowly began to take the wind out of the sails. From a storytelling perspective, this revelation was a major letdown. If it had been one of those customers all along, it would have made for a much more interesting story. Even if it would have been predictable had the episode gone down that path, at least getting from point A to point B would have flowed a lot better than what we were ultimately given. But I'll get back to that soon enough. Considering how nitpicky and over the top these characters were, and how Mr. Loud lashed out at them, and understandably so, finding out they weren't the ones behind the negative feedback was kinda shocking and not so much in a good way. If I had to choose, I'd say believing Mrs. Bernardo or Flip to be the culprit had the most credibility. I also could have said Mr. Grouse as an obvious choice, but he's an angry old man with just about everything, so that's nothing new. Now, when it came to Mrs. Bernardo, it's mentioned how she once applied for a waitress job back in the Season 3 episode Cooked, but the job was given to Grant. She then went on to make a one-woman show as her way of taking a jab at Lynn's table for turning her away. She could have used her play as a platform to influence her audience to start disliking Lynn's table on Nosh if she wasn't the one doing so herself. As for someone like Flip, his idea of a free refill is siphoning all the drinks from the restaurant. It's sort of ironic when you think about how he was the angry one for having to pay back every drop he stole in broad daylight, but knowing the kind of narcissistic cheapskate his character is, him spamming the dislike button for Lynn's table out of spite just sounds like something he would do. But either way, the one behind all the dislikes was neither of the 5 suspects. The one to cause all of Mr. Loud's alpaca crying was Mr. Loud himself, and he didn't even realize it. And that's where the last of the wins were taken out of the sails. It seemed a little too contrived that Lynn Sr. could have created a Nosh account, conveniently came across his own restaurant on the website, and just kept pressing the dislike button every time his phone was in his back pocket. When you think about the number of dislikes he received and the number of times he pulls out his phone without seeing any sort of connection as to what's going on, the ending comes off as rather forced. Now, I will say the butt dialing visually made sense because every time he sat down or moved around when he was sitting on his phone, you could hear a pinging sound. How that could have happened 30 times at the beginning of the episode is still a mystery. However, even that comes off as confusing, and I couldn't fully wrap my mind around it. I'm going to assume the dad originally programmed the Nosh app on his phone to notify him whenever a like or dislike came up for his restaurant, and yet his phone must have been jumping between his unknown new Nosher account and his basic notifications on what I would assume to be an account he already made to keep track of customer ratings, as we see on his laptop. Maybe I'm overthinking the whole thing, and maybe everyone should have been more concerned over how Lynn's table had 30 dislikes and 0 likes, but the execution of the conflict just didn't sit right with me. Pun intended. Just be glad they didn't go for something very stupid like Mrs. Bernardo's horse being the one to leave all the thumbs down. But you know, now I want to see another episode with Bernardo and her horse. I can't be the only one thinking it. Overall, this episode is only just slightly better than Kernel of Truth when it comes to my ratings for Season 5. A good portion of the story was pretty good, and I especially liked the kids working together to save their dad's business from getting more negative feedback. But the final minute or so is what drove the episode down, and the forced revelation we got with Lynn Sr. being new Nosher instead of the customers didn't feel right. I'm all for twist endings, but in my opinion, family bonding from earlier in the season pulled off the shocking reveal a lot better than the one we got here. Like I said, it would have been predictable for Flip or Mrs. Bernardo or any one of those customers to be the true culprit of the bad reviews, but it would have been more natural than just putting all the blame on the idea of butt dialing one's way to 30 dislikes. Why no butt dialing for at least 1 thumbs up? Your guess is as good as mine. With that said, I give Much Ado About Noshing a 7.1 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Much Ado About Noshing. I consider it another episode where it had a lot of potential to be better, but it missed the opportunity to do so, even if the end product would have turned out cliche if it had gone down the predictable path. I'm not saying this is a bad episode, but it definitely could have been better. So what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.